So while I've moved on quite a lot with the droids that I've been building, one of my favorites and one of the ones that still gets the most number of views on my channel is Eve from the movie WALL-E. Now, when I first built it, which would have been a couple of years ago, which is actually in the early stages of me trying to do 3D printing and building props, I was limited by some of the tool sets that I was using, and one of those being Tinkercad. As you kind of see from here, here were the original files that I had. You have limitations, for example, on the number of sides on an object. Filleting to make like smooth transitions wasn't really a thing. So I ended up creating different objects to try and make a simulation of a fillet to make a nice join. In many cases like this, I couldn't get the object shape I wanted, so I'd make it somewhere else. And then I'd import it in, and then I'd just carve out big shapes out of it to get the shape of what I needed to put things like the servo or a circuit board or the screens inside it. Now, that was all well and good. It got me up and running. As I say, one of the shorts I have alone's got 1 million views on it, so people do like it. But if I'm going to do a build video around Eve, I really wanted to do it again from scratch. While the design of it was good, there was a lot that I could improve on it, and then now I've also learned a whole bunch of other things, such as different tools, even how to spray paint and doing clear coats. And even the coding's kind of improved from even just a couple of years ago. So I thought maybe I'll do a rebuild over Christmas, but this time using some slightly different, slightly better software. And End of Fusion 360. In this case, I've been working on this one for the last couple of days. I'm still only learning how to use Fusion 360, but I thought maybe it's time over Christmas to learn how to use it rather than having the, I guess, the constraints of using Tinkercad. As wonderful as Tinkercad is and being able to build things rapidly, when you start rotating objects, start moving them around, they lose, I guess, the orientation, and your measurements suddenly become what used to be 3.2 millimeters becomes 3.1 and things no longer fit. Whereas this, you can make some very precise fittings, make adjustments, and it will also take those adjustments through with you if you set it up correctly. So in this case here, as you can see, I've been building out my new Eve. So I'm going to call this Eve 2.0. But you can do things in Fusion 360 such I can remove the glass cover. You can see where the screens would go inside it. Even inside the head, I could change the transparency or opacity of it. So I could go 30%. And then in this case here, you can see, okay, that's where the speaker goes up the top. And then down the bottom there, that's where the servo would go through. And then round that little arc shape there, that's where the cables go through into the main body. Similarly, I could go in the body itself. I could remove the outer shell, and you can start seeing where the servos go in the center and connect through the arm. So there's one servo in the center here, pushes 2 servos out to the side, and they connect directly to the arm. So I still need to create the joint for the arms there, and the tray for the servos and the servos themselves. But it's come a long way from where it is. I'll probably have to do a few test builds to make sure things like this main centerpiece still fits through the hole and into the body itself. Otherwise, you may find out that I can't actually connect things through. So anyway, this is where we're at the moment. I still have more to do on the design phase. So I'll start doing some test prints and then check out things like tolerances and fit and make sure that's okay. And then I'll start to do the transfer of the electronics across from the original Eve onto the new Eve. So inside the head, there's actually quite a lot going on. There's basically two of these screens that connect through to a Teensy at the back. Separately, there is a Arduino Nano that's controlling the servos and a DFplayer. There is a microphone sensor, effectively for volume. So that was the one I was triggering based off clapping the hands. And then finally here is a Polulu Maestro, which is the servo controller that controls the speed acceleration of the servos and the movements. You can create little scripts with it that you can trigger off from the Arduino Nano. There's a servo inside it, and as you can see, there's a lot that gets crammed into its head. And with the old design, that head was really quite thick and not an efficient use of that space. So I'm hoping to have a lot more room, maybe do it a little bit nicer than here, but that's the guts going to have to get pulled out and put into the new Eve 2.0. I'll probably spend a bit of time actually changing the code as well, because I was never quite happy with the eye movement. Basically, it had a couple of movements based on some sound, but it always made it look a little bit sleepy, and that was probably the #1 comment. So maybe I can do a little bit more to improve on that. In terms of the circuitry, the wires carry on down through the body. There is 3 servos in the main body itself. You can kind of see one through the side here. These just basically get pushed in and out, and the servo can turn left and right. And then finally for power, it comes out through the back to a little USB-C connected down the bottom here. So there's a lot to pull apart. As you can see, here are all those lines on it. Didn't even finish on the side here, so at least here I put a bit of paint over the top, maybe even a little bit of sanding, but not even sanded on the side. So if I'm going to do an assembly build, we're going to do it from scratch, we're going to do it right. We've learned a lot, so let's take those tips and tricks and see if we can build a new Eve 2.0. So watch this space over the next few weeks as I start building out a new version.